Well, hello, our fellow friends, our fellow neighbors, and our fellow shining stars. Our next trolley stop is here, and our next trolley stop is now. Welcome back to another all-new episode of PR from the Heart's children's book spotlight series. To be precise, we have reached episode number 183. That is the 183rd trolley stop here at the Children's Book Spotlight Series as part of our 5-year anniversary celebration that is continuing through the month of September and into the month of October before the holiday season starts knocking at the door. I am John Mancillas, the manager here at PR from the Heart and the host of the Children's Book Spotlight Series. This is actually an episode that is dedicated to all of the grown adults that are out there whose inner children, if you really factor in the collective, navigated through a lot during childhood. You know, it's very interesting because worry can tend to be a predominant feeling that we tend to experience and our kids experience in the process. And as parents and caregivers and custodians of our children, it's very frustrating when we feel that worry, when we see our little ones experiencing that worry. How many times do you just say, I wish this worry would go away, and you try to force it down or compartmentalize it into a drawer? It doesn't work in any way, shape, or form. So I encourage you, as we're in the midst of this anniversary celebration, if you are moving through some simple anxiety just from the day-to-day, or if you're moving through some really large fear of some sort, or larger fears, plural, to just close your eyes and to envision that those anxieties, those fears, those worries are being put into a balloon. And the balloon just flies away. Now, I know that you could say, John, easier said than done, but as we always like to say here at the Children's Book Spotlight Series, leave it to a brand new children's book to help put all of this into perspective, to let us know that these emotions, these feelings that we experience, they are normal, they are natural, and that this too shall pass. We encourage all of you, our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, and of course our fellow shining stars, to head on over to Amazon.com if that is your preferred online vehicle of your choosing, and you can purchase your copy of one of the most anticipated children's books of 2023. It is called The Worry Balloon. One of the many ways that you can pledge your support for Monica to be able to let her know that she's doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, and of course, those who are navigating through some form of simple anxiety or all the way to major fear. You can leave a 5-star review. One of the many ways you can pledge your support for Monica to let her know that she's doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, and for those who love great children's books. Continuing on with our 5-year anniversary celebration of the Children's Book Spotlight Series, the trolley doesn't have to travel very far from San Diego, just up the Southern California coast to the greater Los Angeles area. Joining us is our featured guest on episode number 183 of the Children's Book Spotlight Series, the author of the new children's book, The Worry Balloon, courtesy of our friends and neighbors at Macmillan Kids, is Monica Mancillas. Monica, we really appreciate the free time and joining us here in our neighborhood today. How are things with you?
Things are great. Thank you so much for that amazing introduction.
It's so interesting. I know that we were communicating in the PR from the Heart Green Room and talking about the phrase, how this book, I know for a fact that my inner child could have utilized this growing up in so many ways, shapes, and forms. This is a very powerful message. This isn't the traditional book about, well, if your child has a little simple anxiety or a little boo-boo. This is such a powerful message. And in the 10 years that I've been within the kidlit community, I've never seen anything like this. But before we talk about the book, there's obviously a backstory. And I'm really fascinated to learn about your backstory because everyone has an origin story. And I really feel that when we are asked to be a caregiver of a message, and before that message comes in, I'm curious to learn, because many of our listeners and viewers are probably learning about your work for the first time today and this week. Where did it really all begin for you when you knew that your work, a large part of your purpose, was meant to be for children? Could you take us to that particular point in time where it all began for you?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I have always loved writing, and I've always loved children. I mean, both of those things From the time I was a kid, I always gravitated towards a kind of caretaker role. I had much younger siblings, and I loved children. I worked at a preschool for a short time when I was in college, and as I said, I always loved to write. I had other dreams and aspirations along the way. I studied anthropology in college, which I'm clearly, I mean, I love to study human beings, but I'm not a practicing anthropologist. Out of college, I moved down to Los Angeles to pursue a career as a performing artist, as a recording artist, a singer-songwriter. So, um, I think I put a lot of my writing energy into my songwriting for a number of years, and then I would write short stories here and there. And the dream was always on the back burner. Someday I'm going to write novels. Someday I'm going to write books. And it really wasn't until my daughter was born that suddenly I was thrust into children's literature day in and day out. I would spend hours reading to my daughter from the time she was a newborn. Um, we were constantly taking trips to our local library, which is an experience I missed out on as a kid. So it was thrilling to me to have that opportunity and to fall in love with the library for the first time, really.
Mm.
Um, so we were constantly bringing home children's books. I was trying to find, I left my career behind to stay home with my daughter for the first few years. And so I was trying to find a way to get back to writing and to my creativity. And I was suddenly had all of these ideas for children's books. And then, of course, once I started writing, it became really important to me to write something that would have a positive impact on the next generation, something that could positively influence them. So while I have great admiration for the stories, and there's need for those stories that are out there for children that are just simply there to make you laugh, or there to just for the beauty of the pictures. There's so much diversity in picture books in that sense, and I think that there's room for all of it. I felt called towards writing stories that had sort of a larger message, a larger societal message. So not just for the kids, but also for the parents and the adult readers who were reading them. So that sort of became my mission as I started writing, that every book that I wrote was going to be impactful in some way.
I give you a lot of credit on your end of things because it's very easy. There's many times in life we say, I want to do something. And we can give ourselves a myriad of excuses, reasonings as to maybe I'll do it tomorrow, or maybe when this improves, whether it be a person's lifestyle, financial situation, family situation, living situation. What were some of those things, if you can share? Because whenever we move through the human experience, kind of tying into the theme of our children's book spotlight series episode, we can move through anxieties and fears and difficulties and problems, stressors, troubles, worries. When you knew that everything was becoming clear that you were meant to become a children's author, what were some of the things that you experienced along the way regarding those challenges and difficulties? And what were some of the things that helped you to get through to the other side of those?
Wow, there's so much to unpack there. I think that in some regards, as a parallel to my career in the recording industry, I actually felt that publishing was a lot more welcoming of me. So I think, in anything that you do in life, especially when you're going after these really lofty goals, so much of it is about not just about talent and hard work and showing up every day, but there's an element of timing to it as well. And I think that I stepped through the door at a moment when the publishing industry was looking to diversify. I actually found my agent through DV Pit, which was a pitch event on Twitter that it was focused, I think it's still around, I'm not sure now that Twitter is a changing landscape. But it was focused on giving voice to marginalized authors and their stories. And so
Mm.
I found my agent through that, and I had just barely started querying. So I think in that sense, I was very lucky in terms of timing. I'm not one of those authors that had to go through the years and years of querying and rejections. Although, of course, even once you are signed with an agent, you go through rejection with your agent, you go through rejection with your manuscripts once you send them out on submission to editors. And I suppose that, those are the continuing obstacles. Is you have to have a very thick skin, and you have to really hold on to a belief in what it is that you're doing and why you're doing it.
Mm.
So the very first novel that I wrote was shelved by my agent. She didn't finish reading it. She got about, I think, a quarter of the way in and said, this really isn't in my wheelhouse. This isn't a genre that I typically represent. I'm not sure that I would be the best fit for this. And, those are the moments where some of us can feel that rejection so heavily that we let it stop us.
Mm.
And of course, I have those moments every week in publishing. I talk with my author friends, it's such an emotional roller coaster, this publishing journey. And you really have to be able to ride through those lows, those moments of rejection, those moments where there's complete silence and you don't know what's happening with any of your books. You don't know if your books are going to sell or succeed. And those moments can stop you. But I think what I choose to do is take a few days or however long I need to sort of let it sink in, to let myself feel whatever disappointment or anxiety I'm feeling, and then to rekindle that drive to remind myself why it is that I'm doing this in the first place. I'm writing first and foremost because I have a need to write and I feel called to write. And beyond that, I'm writing for whoever it is that needs my story, even if it's one kid, even if it's one parent. I'm writing for those people. And so really, I've gotten through, I think, every challenge in my life, not just in publishing, by holding on to that inner drive and the belief that no matter what happens, the only way that I can fail is if I give up. If I give up on myself, if I give up on what my dreams are, that's the end of it. But as long as I don't give up, there's always hope. So that's what pushes me through every day. I don't know if I answered your question.
Oh, no, 100%, because I feel that that's really at the crux of, for example, when we're starting something new for the first time, whether it be we're writing our first children's book, whether it be we're becoming a parent for the first time, whether it be just any sort of big first experience or little first experience, we can easily say, how's it going to turn out? Am I going to flop? Is it going to succeed? And all of these different thought bubbles can come through our mind. And it's really important to note the fact, and again, this can sound cliche, but really never giving up really is the key to be able to have that persistence in the process. Again, we hope that all of you are enjoying episode number 183 here from the Heart's Children's Book Spotlight series as part of our 5-year anniversary celebration, which, by the way, happy belated birthday to the little guy over here. Little Forrest actually just turned 1 year old, but he still hasn't gotten the memo about it's okay to release the puppy energy. He's still very much with the puppy energy. Again, we are fully immersed. We're about ready to dive into the pages of the brand new children's book from our featured guest here in episode number 183 of the Children's Book Spotlight series, Monica Mancillas. The book, again, is brand new. It is entitled The Worry Balloon, courtesy of our friends and neighbors at Macmillan Kids. We encourage all of you, if Amazon.com is your preferred online vehicle of your choosing, you can head there. You can get your copy of The Worry Balloon. Leave a 5-star review. One of the many ways you can pledge your support for Monica to let her know that she's doing wonderful and much needed work. Children, parents, families, educators, and for those who love great children's books as well. For all educators all across the country, especially as your little ones are starting the new 2023-2024 school year. If you are interested in facilitating an author school visit for Monica, we've included her website below so that you can keep the conversation flowing and schedule your author visit, because it's really important, especially throughout this school year. Kids will be experiencing worry on some level, in some way, shape, or form. And it's really important that there's a dedicated resource of care that's out there. And that's exactly what the worry balloon is in the process. This particular story, as I mentioned at the onset of our conversation, it really is a powerful story. And there's been many children's books over the years that have talked about anxiety or fear or worry, but I can tell just the care and the depth that you gave and have for this message is very profound. Was there a specific moment in time when you said, okay, I feel that this is the theme of this book? Was it a specific epiphany, aha? Was it a collection of moments, or was it more, I know that sometimes when authors are very guided to write a book on a certain subject, they just feel that they don't see anything like what they're wanting to see on the marketplace. So was it one of those specific things, or maybe was it a collection of those?
Yeah, I think it was a collection of things, but I think most of us tend to write from our personal experiences. And anxiety, though it was a common theme in my childhood and my adult life, it was one of those things that I was almost afraid to write about because it was so personal, because it did bring up so much of my own personal journey, that it really, first and foremost, was an act of courage for me to say, okay, I'm going to write this book, and I'm going to not only write it for myself, but put it out there in the world and be okay with it being out there in the world and with me sharing my own personal struggles. So it was that, but also as I said, my mother experienced long periods of anxiety and depression, as I talk about in my author's note, when I was a kid. And so my experiences with anxiety as a child were one of observer. So I really grew up feeling, an emotional responsibility to my mother to help her through these times, as both as a child, as an adult. But I wasn't, at the time when I was growing up, people didn't talk openly about issues of mental health. It was really stigmatized. My mom asked me not to talk about these things with others because of that stigma. There was always this fear of, what are people going to think of me if they know that I'm going through this struggle? So I didn't have the vocabulary. I didn't have any resources or tools that I could rely on. And also it became, and I think as talking to other adults who have gone through similar experiences, I think this is a very common theme, is that when you are an observer of this, but you're not, again, given any kind of emotional tools or vocabulary to talk about it or process it yourself, it becomes your own source of anxiety. What if, when I grow up, I go through these same struggles, and how am I going to be able to handle it if my mom doesn't have these resources and support to handle it? So, when I did start experiencing anxiety as an adult, I eventually found my own coping mechanisms. I learned to meditate. I started taking yoga classes. I leaned very heavily on exercise and diet and just keeping myself healthy. I went to therapy. All of the things that I sort of had to find on my own. And of course, now we're in a time where there are more resources and people do talk more openly about these things. That has been extremely helpful to me. But what I was not prepared for was for my daughter at age 6 to start experiencing anxiety. So, a lot of kids experience anxieties. They are afraid of the dark. They're afraid of dogs. They're afraid of bees. But she started going through a very challenging experience with anxiety that because I hadn't gone through it as a child, was not anticipating seeing my child going through. And while I had, up until that point, sort of tried to shield her from, my husband and I didn't talk about anxiety in front of her. We didn't talk about whatever struggles we were going through because we didn't want to burden her with those things. It suddenly became really important for me to introduce that word into her vocabulary, to normalize the experience and help her to understand that it is a very normal human emotion. Hi. Oh, cutie. I love those puppy kisses. How cute.
He always loves to be a part of these conversations. I'm really glad that you are very open in terms of sharing your story, because I tend to feel that the best children's books, the ones that really have the greatest connective threads, are the ones that are based on not even just the quote unquote real life story, but you obviously had you saw your mother moving through the challenges that she did. You saw your daughter moving through the challenges that she did. And it's just a matter of, I can only imagine there was a large part of you that said, just as you mentioned at the beginning of the conversation, if only one child, if someone, whether it be, a grown adult or a child, picks up this book and says, you know what, I don't need to hang on to whatever this is here. This is something that they can let go of in the process. In terms of this sweet story, and that's exactly what this is. And obviously the theme of it is very fitting, because many kids, not only in Los Angeles, here in San Diego, not only in Southern California, but across the country, are heading back to school. And during the back to school season is when kids can experience a healthy amount of anxiety, fear, insecurity, worry. In terms of the specific timing of the book and when the book was released, were those things that you wanted to take into consideration as well, too, knowing the fact that this would make a greater impact?
Oh, definitely. Yes. And I think my publisher also timed the release of the book ahead of the return to school for that reason. And that was actually the catalyst for writing the book. As I said, I had always sort of shied away from addressing anxiety head on in my writing. And the pandemic, my daughter, I said she started going through these feelings of anxiety at age 6. And then we worked on many of the coping mechanisms that are in the back of the book, and things calmed down. But then COVID hit, and my daughter was stuck at home with me doing distance learning for a year and a half. She had never had separation anxiety before in her life, but being an only child and suddenly isolated with just me every day, she became suddenly really afraid of being separated from me. Even if I went to the bathroom, she would ask, "Mom, where are you?" And in talking to other parents of only children, their children were going through the same kind of thing. So returning to school, which had previously been something my daughter loved and had no fear of, was suddenly a very terrifying prospect to her. And we couldn't get her through the gates initially. And I thought, she's not the only kid that's going through this. There are millions of children around the world who have just experienced this collective trauma, who have lost people they love, who, even if loved ones didn't pass during COVID, they were separated from friends and teachers and loved ones, family members. So we'd all experienced this collective trauma, and we were just expected to sort of go back to school, go back to work without really processing that. So I felt called to write this book for all of those kids that were going through that, and all the parents that were going through that, so that they had a resource. I found it very challenging to find resources for my daughter in children's literature. Like you said, there are plenty of books that address anxiety, but I felt it was important to not only address the anxiety and, again, normalize it, but to provide those coping mechanisms that we added at the back of the book, so that that parents can, and educators and librarians and children can easily reach for those day in and day out and see which one of them works for them. Does visualization work for me? Meditation, cognitive behavioral therapy, yoga, exercise, which of these things works for me today? And maybe it's a different one each day. And I also, my editor and I felt it was really important to show through Isla's journey that, we didn't want it to have this complete happy ending, that, okay, now she's put her worries in this balloon, it's all over and she's fine now. Because that's not the way life works, right? So that's why we ended it with, the storm might come again, but for now, things were quiet, things were well. That's the way anxiety works. That's the way life works. And I really want to empower children with a feeling that even when anxieties come, they don't have to be overwhelming. They can be managed. There are ways that we can that we have some control over our response to that anxiety.
One of the many reasons why I really love the worry balloon is you really do your part to conceptualize things in a way in which children can understand, especially when it comes to the visualizing of things. So her mind plays the what if game. And so you see the different little, as we said, the little thought bubbles. What if this happens? What if this happens? And it's really addressing some of the deepest fears that children can have. I'm curious to learn a little bit about this, because you could have easily just kind of been very generic in terms of the fears, but even, right at the very beginning of the book, one of the thought bubbles says, what if we go to the hospital and they tell me I'm going to die? It's just right, cutting to the core, but doing it in a very compassionate, empathic way. So you're not sugarcoating things in any way, shape, or form. Why was it important for you to be able to really go fully all in with this, and not to kind of tap dance or sugarcoat around what the anxieties and the fears that children experience are?
Well, I think that when we hide things from children, or when we try to manage their worries and their fears, or downplay them and say, it's okay, that's so silly, you're not going to die, what are you talking about, the fear becomes bigger. I mean, part of the way that we overcome, one of the most successful ways of overcoming our fears or managing our fears is exposure. So the more that we address something head on, if you're afraid of a snake, hold a snake. Obviously, when you're ready, and when you have other coping mechanisms in place, you hold a snake. And the more you hold a snake and your body goes, it's not this terrifying thing that I thought it was. You don't die, you don't get bitten. Your body learns to react. It's a way of helping your nervous system to process these fears and calm down. So I found with my daughter that it helped to confront these things head on, to say what the fears were, to say what you're feeling. I'm feeling anxious. What am I feeling in my body? What is this fear that I have? And not tiptoe around it and not hide from it.
And I think, again, this is something that parents can really relate to. At the same point in time, they may not necessarily know how to start these conversations. If a little one, their child, comes up to them and says, this is what I'm moving through, based on what the parent maybe moved through or didn't move through, they may not necessarily know how to respond. So one of the great things about the worry balloon, and this is why we're encouraging all of our listeners and viewers to be able to really connect with the message of the story, not even to just get the children's book, to be able to connect more with the story and the process. This is a conversation starter. Knowing the fact, obviously now having multiple books out in the world, and other books are going to be forthcoming shortly thereafter, what does it mean to you, not only just on a professional level, but a personal level, knowing the fact that if a child is moving through something, maybe the biggest fear in their entire life, that this book is actually there for them? What does that, have you been able to kind of, just be with the emotions and feelings of that, knowing the fact that your books are actually tangibly making a difference?
Oh yeah. I mean, I had a moment the other day, I always expect that when a box of books comes to my door from the publisher, that's going to be the moment that I'm overwhelmed with tears and emotion, because I look at this book that I've been working on for years, and wow, it's actually here in the world, it's in my hands. And I haven't had that moment. It's a joyful moment. I enjoy it, of course, but that's not what brings me to tears. Last week, I finally had that moment of overwhelm, where it really set in that, oh my gosh, my books are being read and being experienced and doing what I wanted them to do, which is impacting readers. And it came from a couple of different experiences. One was with the worry balloon. I'm part of a Facebook group of local moms, and we talk and we share resources, a few 100,000 moms in this group. And a mom anonymously posted that her son, who is the same age as my daughter currently is, was suddenly unable to eat. because he had this fear of throwing up. And she didn't know what to do. She didn't know if this was a normal thing, a common experience, how to approach it, how to address it. And it really spoke to me because that was where my daughter's anxieties began, was she was having stomach issues and she was terrified of throwing up and would spit out her food and was having trouble eating, which is such a distressing thing when you're a parent.
Mm-hmm.
So I reached out to this mom and offered her a copy of The Worry Balloon. And she came to my house and we stood outside. I gave her the book. I talked to her a little bit about my experiences. And she said to me, my husband and I have never experienced anxiety. So we didn't know what was happening. And we don't know how to respond to this. It's difficult enough to see your child suffering when you know what that feeling of anxiety feels like yourself from personal experience. But I can't imagine what it's like on top of that, to not only see your child suffering, but not to be able to relate, not to understand and be able to give that child the sympathy, yes, but not necessarily the empathy of connecting to their experience and understanding it. So I gave her the book. I talked to her a little bit about our experiences. And that night she messaged me just overwhelmed with emotion and said, we read the book. My son loved it. Thank you so much. These resources are so helpful. And to me, that was everything. It's not the sale of a book. I gave her the book for free. It's knowing that this child and this family have something to turn to now in this moment of difficulty. That's what I write for. That's what it's all about. And then I had another experience with How to Speak in Spanglish, which was just released, where I've had a few different experiences where parents have reached out to me and said they see themselves in this book, and it makes them feel like they're not alone in this experience of having grown up between two different cultures and not quite speaking one language or the other well enough, and feeling ostracized and othered. So it really made me emotional to have that set in. Writing is such a lonely pursuit. You write these things, you put them out in the world, and you don't really know whether people are responding to it. So to have people responding and saying that it has impacted or somehow shifted their lives in a positive way is really emotional for me.
I really appreciate you sharing that story, because especially coming from the pandemic, it was kind of like the pandemic opened up Pandora's box for adults, because many things that adults stuff down, the childhood trauma, the fear, the anxiety, like everyone's everything came up. And there's likely many adults that are still at grown ages having difficulties emotionally regulating themselves. Throughout the course of the history of the Children's Book Spotlight series and even beyond, one of the things that we always firmly believe here at the program is that children's books, they're meant for children, but they're actually meant maybe even more so for adults. Specifically on the thread of adults picking up this book, whether they're a mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, educator, they don't have a child, but they're moving through something. What is the message that you want to be able to specifically to communicate to those adults who are moving through something in their life and they have your book in front of them? What is the takeaway that you hope specifically that adults actually receive from your book?
It's a good question. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is in the introduction to this episode, you use the phrase, "This too shall pass." And that was a phrase that my mom used quite frequently when she was struggling, that she would pass on to me when I was struggling. And it's a powerful message. And sometimes when we're in the thick of crisis, or we're struggling with something, it's hard to feel like it will ever end. It's, especially the anxious brain is trying to convince you otherwise, that, what if it doesn't? The what ifs are always there. What if it doesn't end? What if this is the way you feel for the rest of your life? And so what I would want people who have my book, adults who have my book, to feel is a sense of hope. That first of all, you're not alone. Even young children experience what you're going through right now. It's an extremely common human experience, especially in the world that we live in right now, where there are so many reasons and growing lists of reasons to be anxious. But there are ways through it. There are ways that we can cope and that we can work with our mind and our body to regulate our nervous system and manage those emotions. And there always is another side, the other side. The other side is waiting for you. It's always going to be there.
We're beginning to wind down our time with our featured guest here. And this has been such a beautiful episode. And it's one that we do hope, especially over the course of the past 5 years, many of you always have shared with us how you love to be able to take down notes, little morsels of goodness that you can extract from a children's book spotlight series episode, whether it be for yourself, for the little one, for the student in your life as well. We're beginning to wind down our time with our featured guest here in episode number 183 of the Children's Book Spotlight Series, Monica Mancillas. Her brand new children's book, The Worry Balloon, it is now available, courtesy of our friends and neighbors at Macmillan Kids. We encourage you to head on over to Amazon.com. If that is your preferred online vehicle of your choosing, you can leave a 5-star review, one of the many ways that you can pledge your support for Monica, letting her know that she's doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, for those who love great children's books. You can also pick up The Worry Balloon at any major bookstore, or you can head over to your favorite independent store, your favorite children's bookstore, because of course those are the pillars of our community in addition to local libraries. If they do not stock their copy of The Worry Balloon, make sure that you give that gentle recommendation, as we like to say here at the Children's Book Spotlight Series. Let them know that you heard about The Worry Balloon through the Children's Book Spotlight Series. And of course, for all educators, teachers, principals, librarians, superintendents, if you were interested in facilitating your author school visit with Monica as part of your 2023-2024 school year, you can connect with her via her official website, which we've included in the description below. Again, this is a very powerful message, and just I always like to be able to share, because whenever I go through a children's book, there's kind of like 3 different lenses that I look at it through. One is just kind of like myself as now a 42-year-old grown adult. So number 1. Number 2, there is my inner child who's always a part of me, fully connected. And then there's the publicity side of me. It's just, doing this work that I have been for nearly the past 10 years or so. The attention to detail that you gave, and the Betty's illustrations as well too, knowing the fact that she is a New York Times best-selling illustrator, she was able to be a part of this project. What did it mean to you just seeing this whole thing come to life? Because it's one thing when you say, I have an idea for a book. And for those who aren't necessarily familiar with the world of children's literature, depending upon what route you go down, if you go self-published and let's say you onboard your own illustrator, you can, talk every day on the phone and say, hey, what are your thoughts on illustration spread 12? And you can kind of have this back and forth. When you're within the world of published children's books, you really have to trust the fact that the person that you're working with knows exactly, they're kind of like your second heart, your third arm, your fourth eye, so to speak. So could you share this a little bit about the experience of the book being brought to light through Betty's eyes?
Oh my goodness. I cannot say enough about Betty. I mean, first of all, it's great. She lives in Los Angeles, so she's the first illustrator that I've actually been able to meet with and do events with, and she's absolutely lovely. But her illustrations were just perfect. I mean, when I saw the first sketches and then eventually the dummy of the, and then the finished product, I can't even, obviously I'm struggling to put it into words, but I mean, down to like I use the phrase, the buttercup sun, and her little son and the way that it was smiling and just the way that she brought Isla's worries to life, when I say that her feet felt like trees rooted and she actually draws her feet rooted into the ground. I could not have asked for a better illustrator. I mean, she absolutely brought the book to life in the way that I envisioned. And even more beautifully. So yes, it's just the illustrations are gorgeous. I love them.
One of the top things that I really loved about the worry balloon is at the very end of your book, there is a building your worry tool bag. Now again, there's the part of me that just says, man, like even if this was around when maybe not necessarily when I was a little kid, but maybe let's say when I was, 10, 11, teenagers, like anyone can utilize all of these tools. Being able to continue to keep this message going would have been very easy for you to just be able to say, okay, this is the end of the story, the end. But you're keeping the connective threads going. One of the things that I wanted to be able to call attention to was building a calming corner.
Mm-hmm.
Could you talk with us a little bit about what that necessarily looks like, sounds like, feels like when you tell a little one to build a calming corner? Can you paint a picture of that?
Yeah, so this is something that I did with my daughter when she first started experiencing anxiety. And our house is very small, so we don't have a whole lot of space. I'm sitting in the area that was our calming corner, and I just kind of usurped it. But I bought a little tiny round rug, and I filled this space, the bookshelves behind me, with all of the different tools that she could reach for. So right down below me, there's a series of essential oils. Those are really calming to my daughter. She likes those. So she would come sit over here, grab a book. We'd have, books related to anxiety. Now, of course, we have the worry balloon over here. I printed up, a list of tools that she had spoken about with her therapist that helps her, specific exercises. We have meditation beads. We have one of those like Buddhist singing bowls, that they use in sound baths. So whatever it is that specifically works for you. We've also got our Echo Dot over here, so she could play meditation music. She'd bring the laptop over and pull up some kid-friendly Go Zen meditations. So it was just really a space that she could come and retreat to anytime she was feeling overwhelmed, and where all of those tools or those symbols of those different tools were available to her, so she could remember, okay, I can do that breathing exercise. That really helps me. I can smell my essential oils. That really helps me. And she can reach for whatever. So again, you don't have to have a large space. You can do it anywhere in your house. But I think it's really nice to have a tiny little escape that you can go to.
We always like to be able to provide some tangible information, especially for parents, caregivers, grandparents, and educators. As you mentioned in the back of your book, as you mentioned throughout the course of our episode of the Children's Book Spotlight series, everyone has gone through a lot over the past couple of years, and some people are they're at that max energetic bandwidth, their max capacity, so to speak. So to be able to provide not only just some necessary tangible information, but to be able to help take the edge off, so to speak. What are a few simple yet powerful ways that parents and educators, if they see their child or their student experiencing worry, what are some go-tos? If there's 3 specific, simple yet powerful ways to be able to help the child, the student in your life to be able to navigate through worry and get through to the other side, what would those be?
Well, the first one I think that is so accessible and easy to reach for, because you can do it anywhere, is breathing, like a simple breath meditation. So the one that I use in the book is a very kid-friendly one. I called it hot cocoa breathing. So you coach the child to imagine that they have a cup of hot cocoa, steaming hot cocoa in their hands, and they close their eyes and they breathe in the smell of the hot cocoa through their nose, and then they blow out the steam through their mouth. And they can do that as many times as they need to. And of course, it's a really simple and effective way of regulating our nervous system, because when we panic or we're feeling fear, our heart speeds up, our breathing speeds up. But if you force your body to slow down its breathing, your heart rate will slow down in your body. Your mind will go, okay, I'm not panicking. I don't have to be afraid anymore. So that's always a really quick and easy go-to. I find visualization, which is another one I mentioned in the book, to be extremely effective in my own life. So I like to take time at the end of every single day to not only say a prayer of gratitude and focus on all of the things, even if I was having the worst day of my life, something that day was okay, something was good. So I like to focus my mind on gratitude and then visualize what it is that I want to see happen or that I want to feel in my life. And that might work differently for different kids. They can draw a picture, they can write it down in a journal if they're an older child, or they can just visualize it or say it out loud to the adult that's sitting with them. I see myself going to school tomorrow and making lots of friends and being happy and having a great lunch and coming home and having a play date after school, whatever it is that works for them. And the third, I think, really easy one is getting outside and going for a walk, even if it's just a quick walk around the block. That has been so helpful to both me and my daughter in moments of anxiety. Just going outside, looking up at our beautiful sky, the trees. Sometimes all we need is a distraction and to break the routine thoughts that we are feeling in whatever space we're in. So just going outside and moving can be so helpful.
And I feel, again, just those simple things done regularly can make a world of difference. One of the two ways that we always close out each children's book spotlight series, we're big supporters, big proponents of the late Mr. Rogers, of course. In many ways, shapes, and forms, he encouraged our kids that if you were moving through something, to be able to talk about it, to be able to communicate what's on your mind, what's on your heart in the process. In many ways, shapes and forms, through his time on the neighborhood and even through college commencement speeches, talks all across the country, he did something very special. And, well, two things, technically. One is he always kept the time for us, whether it be 5 seconds, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, or a full minute. He encouraged all of us to remember those who helped love us into being. And that was his way of helping us to remember those people that were on our path or are still on our path, that helped us to move through those difficult days, those challenging moments, the anxieties, fears, insecurities, worries, who helped us to remember our inherent worth and value. So who would you like to publicly recognize here in episode number 183 of the Children's Book Spotlight series that helped love you, Monica Mancillas, into being?
Well, my mother. I mean, through thick and thin, Mom is always your safe space and your rock. And even with her own struggles and challenges, she has always, always been there for me. And she is the keeper of secrets and the one who's always proud and there for reassurance and, to keep me going if I'm doubting myself. So definitely my mom.
And I know that you obviously mentioned your daughter as well, too. You mentioned your husband as well. It really feels like you have a great support system.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yes, my husband and my daughter are amazing, and they're just such amazing supports of my books and my career. My daughter is reading Sing It Like Celia right now, and she loves to come out every night from her bed and go, "Mom, you made me cry. This is the best book I've ever read." And my husband tears up every single time he talks to anybody about my book successes. And yes, they are most definitely my rock as well.
Mm-hmm. You've given so freely to not only your own family, but to children, parents, families, educators across the country and around the world, being a part of the Kidlit community, especially through this book. So one of the things that I always encourage people to remember is that we have the ability to bring to form and shape our own dreams, desires, goals, visions. Sometimes you have to move through the worry to be able to make that happen, so to speak, to be able to help co-create and make that happen. But we have the opportunities to do that for other people in our lives, those who we're blessed to love, care about, and serve. And so we have a little segment here at the Children's Book Spotlight series called 3 Wishes. And yes, we always have this trusty genie lamp with us wherever we go. It's a little tip of the cap, little homage to the beloved Disney animated classic Aladdin. We remember the late Robin Williams as well, too, who played the genie of the lamp. So again, you've given freely for a long period of time. So this is your time to receive. So you're being given 3 wishes, Monica. Now, they can be for yourself, they can be for your family, they can be for the children of the world. I think the only 2 automatic disqualifiers, as the genie had said, is that you can't make someone fall in love with you and you can't ask for more wishes. Anything else besides that is fair game. So what would those 3 wishes be?
Well, I wish that everybody in the world, every living being in this universe, will be blessed with good health and happiness. I wish that my books will be part of that movement and will make a positive difference for many, many years to come. And I wish, oh, that's a hard one. What's my 3rd wish? Those are really the 2. I wish that dogs could live forever. How about that?
Yes, because it's interesting. I saw something recently how a dog brings you the happiest, or one of the happiest days of your life and one of the saddest days of your life. It's when they come in and when they come out of our lives in the process. This has been such a powerful and meaningful episode of the Children's Book Spotlight Series. And there's a reason why we did our part, Monica and I, to carefully curate this episode, because especially as we have shared countless books over the past 5 years, it's really important that the books that we share really make a difference in your life and the lives of your little ones, especially right now as we're in the midst of the back to school season, and then sooner than we know it, it's going to be the holiday season as well too. Of course, if you are fans of the cinema and movies, you remember not that long ago, the beloved film critic Siskel and Ebert, they always gave 2 thumbs up if they really loved the film. Well, the world of children's literature, one of the biggest endorsements is when Little Forrest gives 2 paws up. He thoroughly enjoys the worry balloon. So Little Forrest has given 2 paws up in the process. So again, we encourage all of you, our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, and of course, our fellow shining stars, to head on over to your favorite local children's or independent bookstore, or yes, the big box store, if that's your preferred destination of your choosing. Remember, if you head to your favorite local library, your favorite children's or independent bookstore, and they do not stock their copy of The Worry Balloon, make that gentle, kind recommendation in the process. You can also head on over to Amazon.com if that's your preferred online vehicle of your choosing. You can leave a 5-star review for The Worry Balloon. Of course, that's one of the many ways that you can pledge your support for Monica to let her know that she is doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, and those who love great children's books. You can also purchase your copy of How to Speak in Spanglish, which is also now available as well, too, courtesy of our friends and neighbors at Penguin Kids in the process. There is more to come for Monica as well, too. So we encourage you to keep the conversation going post-Children's Book Spotlight Series. We've included not only Monica's official website, but also her social media platforms in the description below, so that you can be able to, again, keep the conversation going, not only post-Children's Book Spotlight Series, but into the holiday season, into the forthcoming new year. And again, if you are an educator, not only in Los Angeles or Southern California, but across the country, and if you're interested in facilitating an author school visit with Monica, you can head on over to her official website, which again, we've included in the description below. Raise your hand if you have had fun on episode number 183 of the Children's Book Spotlight Series. Hands up for Monica, hands up from myself, hands up for the little ones that we now see on screen. So as we always like to say, mission accomplished, job well done. And as we hear the trolley, that means that it is time to go. So, of course, if this message has inspired you, these messages that we have shared throughout the course of episode number 183 of the Children's Book Spotlight Series, if they have been meaningful to you, if you feel that these messages, that the story of the Worry Balloon needs to be able to be shared with someone in need, whether it be a child in your life or someone whose inner child really needs to hear this message, especially at this time. One of the many ways you can pledge your support as well for Monica, in addition to us here at the Children's Book Spotlight Series and PR from the Heart, is to subscribe to PR from the Heart's official YouTube channel and share this very special trolley stop that you have been enjoying. That is episode number 183 of the Children's Book Spotlight Series. There are many more magical trolley stops to come as part of our 5-year anniversary celebration of the Children's Book Spotlight Series. And then we're going to be into the holiday season here at PR from the Heart. and the Children's Book Spotlight Series, and then we'll be kicking off the new year. So if you are a children's or middle grade author and would like to share your inspiring story and the release of your brand new children's book on a forthcoming edition of the Children's Book Spotlight Series, just like Monica did here this week, you can head on over to our official website, prfromtheheart.com, or connect with us via any of our social media platforms that you now see on screen: Facebook, Instagram, and yes, the artist formerly known as Twitter. That's how I'm starting to refer to this as. It's called X, but it's the artist formerly known as Twitter. All the social media platforms that you now see on screen. We are super excited. In just a few short weeks, the trolley is going to be heading across the country from San Diego to visit our dear friend and neighbor. You remember him and you love him as the beloved Mr. McFeely on the long-running children's television program, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. We are going to be heading back to the Center for Media Innovation in downtown Pittsburgh to be able to record some special episodes of the PR from the Heart Neighborly Reviews bookcast. So if you are a children's author and would like for David and I to deliver a heartfelt review of your brand new children's book on a forthcoming edition of the Neighborly Reviews bookcast, you know where to connect with us via our official website, prfromtheheart.com, or any of your social media platforms on screen. And of course, yes, as now many authors, both self-published and published, are doing their part to create their game plan for 2024. And if you're experiencing some worry, wondering how in the heck is this children's book going to get out into the world, you can connect with us to see how we can be of service to you, as we are now entering our 10th year of service to children's authors across the country and around the world. If you're interested in facilitating a book media tour in a city or cities of your choosing, or a national book media tour, you can schedule your courtesy connection call by heading on over to prfromtheheart.com. One final time, you can head on over to Monica Mancillas' official website, in addition to Amazon.com. If that is your preferred online vehicle of your choosing, you can get your copy of The Worry Balloon, leave a 5-star review. Again, one of the many ways you can pledge your support for Monica to let her know that she's doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, and for those who love great children's books in the process as well. And again, if you head to your favorite local library, children's independent bookstore, and if the Worry Balloon is not there, give that kind, polite recommendation. You don't want to demand anything in any way, shape, or form. That's why we do a little tip of the cap, so to speak. Make that kind recommendation in the process. But again, there's more magical trolley stops to come. But for now, we're bringing things to a conclusion. So we hope that you've learned something today. We hope that you have learned many things, that there's many takeaways that you will be taking away from episode number 183 of the Children's Book Spotlight Series. We want to thank you for your continued support of PR from the Heart, for your continued support of the Children's Book Spotlight Series, for your continued support of children's authors, whether it be picture book authors, middle grade authors, children's book illustrators who are doing wonderful and much needed work like Monica, and are sharing their messages with children, parents, families, educators, and those who love great children's books. For the pillars of our community, local libraries and children's and independent bookstores. But above all else, we want to thank you for helping us to walk home the children of the world. One last tip of the cap, again, to our favorite neighbor, Mr. Rogers. Again, he still, from the other side, is very much encouraging us to remember our inherent worth and our inherent value. He's reminding us every day that if we're moving through something, that yes, this too shall pass, and there is something even better that is on the other side of what it is that you are moving through. He actually encouraged us by his natural weight. He actually weighed 143 pounds for the majority of his natural adult life. That was his way of saying, I love you. There's 1 letter in I, 4 letters in love, and 3 letters in you. Monica was very kind to be able to give us some of her free time this week. We like to remind all of you of your inherent worth and your inherent value, that even if you're moving through something small, medium, or supersize in some way, shape, or form, that this too shall pass, and that you're loved more than you can ever know. So we like to share 2, 4, 3. There's 2 letters in we, 4 letters in love, 3 letters in you. That is our reminder that you are loved, that you are whole, you are healthy, you are complete, that you are special just the way that you are, that we like you just the way that you are. So for Little Forrest, who is now thankfully calmed down, for Monica Mancillas, for myself, John Massalonis, thank you for continuing to spend some time with us here in our neighborhood as part of the 5-year anniversary celebration of the Children's Book Spotlight Series. Again, thank you for helping us to walk home the children of the world, our fellow friends, our fellow neighbors, and our fellow shining stars. Goodbye for now.